Welcome, fellow painters. This is JuliAnne Jonker, and I'm going to be going through these new brushes that I made for my brush pack for Painter 2020 and be showing you how I use these particular brushes. So we have a basically finished painting here that was done in Painter, and we're looking at the full view first because most of what we'll be doing is zooming in and doing little detailed things. All of these brushes are made in what I'm calling my finishing pack because it's for the fine tuning that you do at the end when you think you're done with a painting, the little things that might be bugging you, little things that would improve your painting. So starting with the top, we have the Blender Edge Tweak. And of course, you know the names for these brushes. You can use them however you choose. I'm just going to show you some of the things I do, and I've gone through and played with this image several times before recording, and every time I do it I use them differently. So I'm a very intuitive painter. I'm not real step one, step two, but we'll see what I do this time around. And this is going to be a very candid video because I don't know how to use editing software, so this is really like you're just sitting here with me. So I have my clone source here. My clone source is not a photograph, it's just my same painting. So at any point I could go back to what it's like now and I can draw on the color out of that, but I'm not like drawing from the photograph that I had of the girl from the original painting. So I'm going to choose the skin tone right here and use this to just tweak out this edge where it was kind of felt like a little bit of a dent in her face, and then come back on the other side. I do a lot of picking color and coming back and picking another. So that's one example. Let's look for another spot. I can see one here, this little tiny blurb that's sticking out. I might want to get rid of that. So I did 3 different color picks there. And I guess, well, it wouldn't be the same. I was going to say it would be the same if we put it on clone color, but it wouldn't because I'm trying to change the colors in this case. So you don't want to be using it on clone color. I do a lot of small brush strokes at this point. Very different than you can see how I painted it with some of the long brush strokes. Blender for finishing. So this would be, for instance, this might feel too much like a splotch to me. And of course, everything we're doing is subjective, which it is all through the painting and also at your finishing. I mean, the whole process is going to make it even lower opacity. And some of them I'll show you what they do on a spot where I'm not painting, so you can just see what the brush looks like, what some of the strokes are. But see how that's just finessing it that tiny bit. And most of these are for little tiny finessing things like that. Maybe these lines bug me here. And I'm also using the pressure of my Wacom tablet to make some of these changes. Blender for values. This one reminds me of Pac-Man, if you guys know what that means. And I'm going to just come along this little edge because I don't love that stroke that I used. It's almost too much of a stamp looking. And you see the shape of this dab, it's kind of like a chalk. Many of these areas we'll work on and then I'll come back again. So I don't like that that's getting gray. I'm going to choose this color and go a little bit warmer and just see what that does. Oh, it's still doing the gray. So if this brush does a cloning thing, I'm going to try that. Yep, I like that better. So right now what it's doing is drawing from my painting. But I'm using this brush, so it's changing that original painting that had the marks I didn't like, but I'm liking to draw back on my own color. The forehead bugs me that these strokes look too mechanical. And there's a bunch of the brushes we could use for that. But this, I'm kind of like just sweeping over it. Just little subtle sweeps. Don't like the dent that one made. Let me take that off. Skin blender. So now I am going to go to the color that's in my original painting rather than skipping back and forth. But of course, whichever ones of these can be used for both, you know, use them both ways in different applications. But right now, I don't want to have to constantly option for my color. I can just kind of go along here, and I don't want to kill that texture, just wanted to mellow it out. See if I can find another spot for that same thing. Well, maybe right here. You know, it's always the dance between the subtle and the not so subtle, the hard lines and the soft lines, which is what art always involves. I hate naming a brush hair because that's not what real painting is like. Like, you'd use a brush for many different things. You would never just have a brush that's for hair. But as a reminder, this one will work good. And I'll just draw on the face so you can see what it does. See that nice, not perfectly even thing that's happening there? It is good for hair and for animals too. And so I'll use it on here to show that, but seriously, that's not all that you could do with this brush. You can use it anytime you want those subtle lines. So I made some that are similar, that are called pencil drawing and sketch. There's several of those. And what I'm doing here, this texture kind of bugs me that I left there. And I believe that was paper texture coming through. I might save this one for when I come to the pencil so you can see me do the same thing. This bothered me, that little so I'll use this one. And I'm pushing pretty hard. I like to use lower opacity. I don't like to be afraid to push down with my pen. So I like to get a brush where you can dig in with it and you're not gonna like freak yourself out by what comes out of the brush. So you can see how this is slowly, and there are two. This is a soft one. I'll put it on the face so you can see it again. Can you see that? It's doing the same thing but not as dark. A little bit more sparse and light. So now I'm going to grab some of the flesh tone and bring it in here, which is a fun thing to do with hairs. Grab color from different parts of the image. This is still bothering me, and I might just skip over, and the one that says blender skin, I'll purposely use that so that you can see that these brushes are like to be used for many things. It was on clone. I'm going to put it back on color, and I'll do it in here so you can see what it does. See that? It's more like a solid smear than the last one. Color-wise, I think I'll go with something down here, because I'm still trying to mask those little All right, I'm going to leave that like that, and then come over and pick pencil sketch. And I'll start with picking a dark. So see how it's now. And I guess when people do digital painting, they probably do paint somewhat like they paint in real life. I do a lot of layers in my traditional painting, so it kind of feels normal to me to do that in the digital world as well. Over here, at some point I want to make a shadow there, but I'll see which one I do it with. We are going to skip the impastos and do those at the end, so we're on the pencil drawing. And as you can see on this image, I did a fair amount of this type of sketchy thing, which I love to do. And this one, you can push pretty hard on it, this pencil, like how hard I'm weighing down onto my Wacom tablet. So this pencil one I'm going to use to obliterate the amount of texture. I don't want to get rid of all of it. It's kind of fun to have that paper looking texture, but it just stood out more than I wanted it to. I think I'll pick this color since it's my highlight color on the hair. That's working good there. And if I can just get it in there. So these are definitely the little final pieces of what you do to a painting. You know, when people always debate about when do you know when a painting's done. After all this stuff is when you get, at least for me, when I get the feeling like, yes, this is completed. Okay, let's go back down. We'll do something with pencil random, which is way more out of control. I'll show you on her cheek. That was a bunch of brush strokes, by the way. It wasn't all happening from one stroke. So another thing that I find is I like to add texture in many different ways to digital paintings, especially when you are starting with originally a photograph. If you're a photographer, the overly soft thing is something that is not my favorite. Let's see, which one did I just do? Random. I'm gonna go to drawing and maybe make a few bigger strokes and darker in here. So I'm using my option, and see how much now this little area that was kind of too soft goes with the rest of the feeling of the painting. And maybe even here we could use a couple of those little, whoop, that might be too much. And I'm going to try this one, drawing from the color that's below it, because it will be more subtle, but just add texture. See now that lighter color that's coming? I'm going to actually take those off, but you can see I drew from the color underneath. So now I have some of the dark ones next to some of the light ones, which to me looks great. All right, another thing that you can use this for would be eyelashes. And I wasn't going to name it eyelashes, but it is perfect for that. So I have kind of a smudged eye line in there, but when you add the sketchy with it, let's see how big this guy is. It's kind of nice to have that combo. If I only had the sketchy lines, also here it's going to be great. Oops, I'm not on clone color. Maybe it's fun to add that purple. That wasn't on purpose, but I like it. I'm going to pick some more natural hair color and add in too. So the pencil, and since I love drawing, I feel like, see, like you can see right here, some drawing strokes going on. I love drawing and I love pastels, so those are two things that I like to emulate in paintings. All right, with this one, its default is that it's on clone color. So I'm going to add texture right here. Earlier when I said I wasn't thrilled about some of those lines, see how that just broke them up? So on this, I'm kind of like almost scratching over the surface. Up here as well, I might want to scratch a little bit of texture in. And we'll add more of this with our impasto later. But the overly soft thing that can happen when you're doing realism and when your source image is a photograph, to me, can use some tweaking often. So this is bugging me, and I'm not sure if this is the right brush, but I'm going to try this one. That was not on purpose. Okay, I'm going to go off clone. And we're going to come back and choose that darker color and try to blend this little bit. Maybe a little more opacity. This whole little thing is kind of irritating me in here. So I'm choosing the color next to it and trying to bring some of that color over into this piece that has color I'm not thrilled with. Pick some of that flesh tone. Now right in here, I want it to be a little darker, and wow, it looks really dark over here. Let's just see what I'm getting. Yep. And I'll come back with something else in there too. So you can see how adding the texture, this is pretty soft right in there. So I'm going to switch back over, take the color out of my image, make it a little bit bigger, and add just a bit, just to break up that feeling that patches can get with the digital painting, that they're too soft. This is, I'll back up so you can see what I'm working on. There is a highlight, and I like the color, but I definitely want to tweak that. So let's go in there. You see what brushes are coming up. Texture Disrupt, Texture Dry Pastel, and Texture Impression. So all of the rest of them are texture ones, and I'm not even sure which one is going to be best in here yet. Let's start with this guy. Right now I'm using the color out of my painting, so I don't have to worry about getting some crazy color where I don't want it. And this is a spot that's, to me, some of the hardest in digital painting, where we have an abrupt value change from that highlight. So that's all I'm going to do with that one. Let's move on to the next and see what this guy would, well, there you can see what it does with that crazy color. And maybe I'll stick with my color in because it's such a touchy. I'll switch over to regular color just so you can see how I would use it with that. Because like right now this looks too foggy gray. So if I come back here, now I can bring some of the darker in there. So I'm continuing to hold down the Option key and sample colors that are next to what I'm doing. And this is the stuff that's so wonderful compared to traditional painting, where you have to go mix that color every single time. All right, it's not done, but that's what I would do first. The texture impression is kind of a crazy one. I'm going to see what it does here. This one I almost called it smudge because, for instance, right here is a stamp that's like a fingerprint, which sometimes is really fun, but I didn't love it in this painting. So I can just kind of blurble it around and make it not look like what it was. Same with this. This might be too distinctive a texture. So you can see how this is, it's kind of like the warp tool in Photoshop. There was another spot. This I want to deal with. So I could start with that. Go over to color. What I'm going to need to do eventually is really come over this with some lighter if I want to eliminate that. This texture impression would be great for, see this value change right there? I might just want to go just bend it around a little bit. Yeah, we're back on regular color. Go back here to Blender Finishing, be on Clone, because I kind of think I lost something that I wanted there. And I don't have a straight up cloner in this group because you have that, but that is better. It softened that bone. So I use a combination of things. There isn't like a formula. You just have to play around and use all of them. All right, back to this. I think I would next try the chalk, the dry pastel. And I'm going to go to color, grab some of this. Maybe I'll demo this one over here on the light skin so you can see what it does. See how it looks? You can see the texture of chalk. So I'm sampling for sure because I'm gonna see those brush strokes of whatever I choose. Okay, that's probably all I do before I go too far and make it worse. You can see there, we kept our highlight, but when you zoom in, it does. If I could go back, I don't know how to show you what it was originally, but it looks better, you can believe me. Then I would probably take my pencil sketch and come into this area and pick some of the colors that are there and go over it. Wonder if you guys can hear saws in the background. My husband is working on a project outside, and I just realized you may get parts of that in the audio. This is the unplugged tutorial during the quarantine. There, it's getting to be more what I wanted. I just wanted a subtle transition that didn't have the white texture coming through, but I don't want to lose that light effect because I dig the way it looks. All right, then let's go over and deal with this one over here before we do the impasto texture, which would be the final pieces. So I'm going to pick the gray, and with this I can draw right over what I had. Now if I had my source image as my original, then I would just be drawing from that. But it comes to a point in a painting where I don't want that photo. I don't want to be looking at it anymore. I don't want to be drawing from it. I just want to be making the painting what the painting should be. So I don't have her up here, but you can have several sources sitting there. So I could have had that and just went back to my original backdrop, but I think it's better to have more layers of paint. Another spot. Let's try the skin blender up here, just to get that texture a little bit more. Well, and I don't even like the way it went into the eye. I'm going to make it smaller. So very tiny. Boom, just that little bit. Look for more of those. And you know, some of these things I might not do. I'm like showing you stuff you can do. You could, like if this edge bugged you, you could kick down that edge. So yeah, that looks better. This line might be too harsh, but don't want to go too far because I don't want it to get too realistic. So now I'm going to show the last two brushes, which would be your impastos. I'll start with the most potent one. So in traditional painting, you're going to get the most impasto in your lights. Hopefully you can see what that added. Here, I'll undo it and see if you can watch me get it off and do it again. You see it disappear there? I added some texture with the texture brush, but this is actually, I already have it at 6% opacity because I want this to just be a kiss, just a kiss of texture. And there are ways in Painter that you can add impasto like to the whole layer, but I prefer to add it in little bits personally. Again, to me it looks more organic. When it doesn't, that one doesn't look organic. Go back. I'm going to go grab the light one. Yeah, this one I can push harder without getting craziness. And these kind of things show a lot if you print your work. I'm actually a painter artist who does commissioned portraits, so my painter images get printed. So all of these little subtleties really matter when you're doing client work. So in all of these lights, in here too, anywhere where you feel like it might be too soft. This looks really soft to me, so I'm going to do our heavy texture one, make it teensy-eensy, and just give it a couple little, yeah, that broke it up. And I also just, you know, so that you're knowing where I'm coming from when I do this, I also paint, and always have since I started Painter. I've always painted with real oils on my paintings after they're printed. So I want to get this surface prepped. I'm so barely touching, and I'm not doing it all in the same direction. I'm going one direction then the next, so that there's real variety of stroke. And that's pretty much it, other than I was going to show you making a shadow over there. So at this point, for no great reason, I'm just going to pick the hair Like, many of these tools could have been used for this. So see those brush strokes there? I'm going to choose a shadow color. I don't want that black, so I'm going to come over here and pick a brown and very gently come along that edge, because in real life there would be a shadow there, but I don't want to obliterate. I think the reason I love the subtle brushes is, since I'm a layering painter, you don't want to obliterate what was on your layer before the one you're on. You know what I'm saying? It's like the point of layers isn't just to build up texture. It's to see through the old layers and see that history and be able to see what's under it. That makes it so wonderful. So here she is, our Caitlin, and I feel as an artist much better with all those finishing things. So I hope that you'll take these brushes and find some of the same success on your paintings. Thank you.